Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Yondas, and welcome to Connect to Create. If you are familiar with Connect to Create and you're back with us, we're so happy to have you back and welcome. And if you're new to our videos for Connect to Create, we're glad you found us and glad to have you with us. I know I'm saying we, so let me give you a little bit of background. Connect to Create is a collaboration between myself and a friend and another Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, Pat Fairless from Fairless Stamp and Flair. And our whole goal when we started off with these Connect to Create videos were to create very short videos showing techniques that you could take back and use in your paper crafting and card making. Wasn't to show you how to make the card, but we would show you the finished product after we did the technique. So today I am going to show you an oldie but a goodie, and I think one that's often forgotten about. It's dry embossing on vellum. So hopefully last week you were able to see Pat doing the rubber band stamping, which is fun. I've never done that. I plan on doing that this week. And today we're going to show you how to do the dry embossing on vellum. So I'm going to flip my camera down and we're going to get started. Hopefully you can see and hear me well. This is going to be a really quick technique and very easy. There's really not any way you can mess it up. So all you really need is some vellum, and Stampin' Up! Sells that. I love Stampin' Up's vellum because it's not flimsy. It has a nice weight to it, and I think it works beautiful for whatever you're going to use it for. So I have a piece here that's cut, I believe it's 4 by 5 1/4. And you can do this with any embossing folder. Now I've pulled 3 that I've used that I'm going to show you. And we're going to pull in our stamp cut and emboss machine and get started here. So the first one I'm going to show you is we're going to use the Charming Landscapes. These fit in the mini cut and emboss machine. I will show you a card when we're done where I used the mountains for just a very simple card. So these do not fit a full piece of paper or a piece of vellum or cardstock, whatever it is that you're choosing to emboss. But I didn't want that. I wanted some blank space at the top and the bottom, and you'll see that with my card. The other thing is you can always trim it down. So when you're inserting your paper or vellum, I take mine to the line. That way I know that my design is going to be straight. Now, because this does not fit the cover, the whole piece of vellum, I want to make sure that it's pretty even on both sides. So I'm lining it up, if you can see that, with that black line. I'm going to hold it up. Apologize for the glare on the plastic. And I still need to pull it over just a little bit so it's centered more. So let me do that. And then we'll pick it back up and run it through our machine. So that looks pretty good. So there we are, lined up with our black line and all the way back into the folder almost. Now I have this, I'm using my large cut and emboss machine simply because I am going to be using a full folder and that doesn't fit through the mini on the next one. So I'm using the Charming Landscapes, and these are not 3D folders. So when you're embossing 3D folders on the large cut and emboss, you're going to use plate number 1. And you are going to use both of the number 3 plates. So I have one here. I'm setting my embossing folder in the middle. I'm going to cover it with the other one. When you feed this, and you feed any embossing folder through your cut and emboss machine, you always want the fold to go in first. That should go through as you're turning the crank before anything else. If you flip it the other way, you run the risk of cracking that fold in the embossing folder and ruining your embossing folder. And I am speaking from experience. So let's take this out, and I'm going to show you what we have here. Let's pick this up and see. So you can see that I have, hopefully you can see that. You can see when you emboss on vellum, it turns the vellum white, like a pop of white. If you turn it over, some people for design may use the de-embossed side. I typically stay with this one. Now, I was hoping I had some of the gold shimmer vellum, and I didn't. I had used it all up. If you were to use the vellum, and sometimes Stampin' Up! Does come out with the colored vellum, you will have the color in the background and then the white pops of color from the embossing folder on top of that. So here's our mountains. So the one thing I do want to show you is how I adhere my vellum to my cardstock. I don't use my tear and tape. I don't use my Stampin' Seal Plus because I try really hard to get it, and I don't always, but I try hard to get it so you do not see the glue coming through on that vellum. So let me bring in my silicone mat. I'm going to bring in a crafting sponge. Now I cut my crafting sponges in quarters. I put a little paper clip, the clamp type, on them, and I keep them in a Tupperware container. Now I do rinse it out when I'm done using it, and then I pop it back in here and it's ready to use for the next time. So I use multi-purpose glue, and I'm just going to squeeze a good amount out onto my silicone mat. And I'm going to take my little sponge, and I'm going to swirl this around and get it really thin. I want it to be like a film on my silicone mat. And then I'm going to take my mat and my sponge, and I'm going to go ahead and wipe it gently across my vellum. And I want to make sure that I don't leave any. You can see I already got the vellum in there, so I'm going to have a mark on this one in the front. But I just kind of sweep it through lightly and make sure that it's well covered. And then I go ahead, and this is going to be about 1/8 of an inch on each side, shy of the cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead then and just adhere it. And I gently press it down. I don't press hard because I don't want to affect my embossing. And you can see pretty much it covered really nicely. I have a little bit up in here, but that's where I stuck it on the mat, and it's on the outside, not the inside, but it adheres nicely. So that's how I recommend adhering your vellum, whether it's embossed or not, to your cardstock. Now let me show you another one. And I'm not going to do it any different, but I am going to show you I'm going to use the trees. Trees, maybe the script. We're going to use the time-worn type. So I do have another piece of vellum here. Now on this one, you can see I had some blank areas that aren't embossed. And this is the card that I made with this. Very simple card. I kept my embossing as my only layer. I tied a bow along that area that had no embossing at all to kind of dress it up. I put a little deer in there. I used banner and put it across the top, and then just added some gems. So, and very simple, but I also think kind of elegant. So I want to show you another one. And I used the time-worn type. And I'm going to move this out of the way because we aren't going to have to do that anymore. So with this one, make sure that when you have your large folders and you have a direction that you can choose one or the other, you want to make sure to put your vellum in the direction you're going to lay it on your card. It may matter, and depending on your card, it may not. So again, I want to line this up with my black line. And this card is going to be in a portrait mode, not landscape. So I want to make sure that, oops, I've got glue on my hands and the vellum is sticking. I want to make sure that this is lined up along that line because I don't want my the typing on that vellum. I don't want it to be crooked. So we're going to go ahead and run this through. Now this one is a 3D embossing folder. So our sandwich is going to be a little bit different than the last one. Now this obviously won't fit in the mini cut and emboss machine. So you'd have to use the standard size one. So you're going to use plate number 1. You're going to set your embossing folder down. And then you're going to add plate number 4, the gray plate. I do put those in, and then just go ahead and run it right through. You can hear a pop. Sorry about that. And then you have your embossed vellum. And hopefully you can see where the words are. You can see how it kind of whites them out as it pops them up. So the card I made with this one is right here. And I used the Hues of Happiness bundle. And I cut the flowers out using the die cuts. But on the back, you can see my base is balmy blue. And then I took a piece of the designer series paper that was kind of layered in colors, night and navy, coastal cabana, and balmy blue, and adhered that to my card base, and then adhered the vellum to that so that you can see some of the color underneath the vellum. So it's as simple as that, running the vellum through your embossing folder and then adhering it to your card base or your layer, whichever it is that you choose to do. So I'm going to bring the 2 cards back in. And again, it's an old technique, but a good one. I think one that we're starting to see used again a little bit more. I hope you'll give it a try. And let me flip this back up to me. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you'll give this technique a try. It's definitely an easy one. And Pat will be back with you next Thursday at 10 a.m. And I'm not quite sure what she's going to do for you next week. So it might be a surprise, but I promise you it'll be a good one. So have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week.